I never imagined that the hardest part of trying to start a family wouldn't be the medical tests, the injections, or even the endless waiting. I thought it would be the long nights at work, the exhaustion, the sacrifices. But the real heartbreak came from someone I trusted with my life. This story didn't begin with betrayal. It began with hope. A quiet, fragile hope that grew stronger every time I dragged myself out of bed after barely sleeping, every time I worked another shift, every time I reminded myself why I was doing this. For years, my life revolved around work. Not because I loved it, but because I had a goal that mattered more than anything else. I was working 80-hour weeks, sometimes more. Double shifts. Weekends. Holidays. Days when my body felt like it might give out, but my mind refused to quit. All of it was for one reason: IVF treatment. After years of trying and failing to conceive, doctors told me this was my best chance. It wasn't guaranteed, but it was hope, and hope was expensive. IVF isn't something you just decide to do overnight. It takes planning, money, emotional strength, and a lot of patience. Insurance barely covered anything. Every appointment, every test, every medication came with a price tag that felt heavier each time I looked at it. The number that stuck in my head was $10,000. That was the amount I needed just to get started. For some people, that might not sound impossible. For me, it felt like a mountain. So I made sacrifices. I stopped going out. I skipped family gatherings because I was too tired or too busy working. I sold things I loved. I learned how to live on the bare minimum. My life became a cycle of work, sleep, and saving. Every dollar went into a separate account, one I rarely touched, one that represented not just money, but years of longing, disappointment, and dreams I was still afraid to say out loud. Through all of this, my brother was around. We weren't extremely close, but we were family. We grew up together, shared the same roof, the same parents, the same childhood memories. I trusted him. He knew about my struggles, about the fertility issues, about how much IVF meant to me. I didn't hide it. Some days I needed someone to talk to, and he was there, listening, nodding, offering words that sounded supportive at the time. He also knew about the money. I told him when I finally reached my goal. I remember the day clearly. I was exhausted but proud. I had done it. $10,000 saved through sweat, stress, and sheer determination. It felt like the first real step toward becoming a parent. I didn't celebrate loudly. I just felt this quiet relief, like maybe all the pain had been leading somewhere after all. My brother congratulated me. He smiled. He said he was happy for me. Nothing about that moment felt wrong. Nothing warned me about what was coming next. Around this time, his relationship with his girlfriend became more serious. She was always around, always involved in everything he did. I didn't think much of it. It wasn't my place to judge. But I started noticing little things. Expensive dinners. New gadgets. Plans that didn't seem to match his financial situation. He complained about money often, joked about being broke, but somehow always found a way to spend. Still, I never connected the dots. Why would I? The idea that someone so close to me would cross that kind of line didn't even cross my mind. I was too focused on my own journey, my own body, my own future. IVF appointments were coming up. Paperwork was piling up. I was finally allowing myself to imagine what life could look like if this worked. Then one ordinary day, everything collapsed. I logged into my account to check the balance, something I did often just to reassure myself it was real. The number on the screen didn't make sense. I refreshed the page. I checked again. My heart started pounding. The money was gone. Not a small amount. Not a mistake. Almost all of it. The $10,000 I worked 80-hour weeks for had vanished. At first, I thought it was an error. A glitch. I called the bank, hands shaking, voice barely steady. That's when I heard the words that changed everything. The transaction had been authorized. The money had been withdrawn. There was a name attached to it. A name I never expected to hear. My brother. I felt numb. Confused. Sick. My mind refused to accept it. I replayed every conversation, every memory, searching for something I missed. The bank explained the details, but I could barely hear them. All I could think about was how this money wasn't just savings. It was my chance. My hope. My future family. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. That hurt almost as much as the theft itself. He said he needed it. He said it was temporary. He said it was for his girlfriend, for something she wanted, something he felt pressured to provide. He promised he would pay it back. Someday. Someday didn't help me. Someday didn't give me back the time I lost, the energy I spent, the dreams I had been holding on to. Someday didn't stop the tears, the anger, the betrayal that cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. I stood there, staring at someone I thought I knew, realizing that the person who hurt me the most wasn't a stranger, wasn't fate, wasn't my own body. It was my own brother. And in that moment, I had to make a decision that would change everything. Do I fight for what's mine and risk tearing my family apart? Or do I stay silent and watch my dreams slip away? That's where this story really begins. After that confrontation, nothing felt real anymore. I went home that night and sat in the dark, replaying his words over and over. He kept saying it was temporary, like that made it better. Like you could temporarily steal someone's future and expect them to be okay with it. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that bank balance again, the empty space where my savings used to be. It felt like someone had reached inside my chest and pulled something out. The next few days passed in a blur. I still went to work. I still showed up for my shifts, smiled when I had to, nodded when people talked to me. But inside I was breaking apart. Those 80-hour weeks suddenly felt pointless. Every hour I had spent exhausted, every time I pushed my body past its limits, all of it now felt wasted. I kept asking myself how I didn't see this coming. How I could trust someone so completely and be so wrong. IVF timelines don't wait for emotional breakdowns. Clinics don't pause because your family betrayed you. I had calls from the fertility center reminding me about upcoming appointments, deposits, paperwork. Each call felt like a reminder of what I had lost. I didn't tell them what happened. I couldn't. Saying it out loud made it too real. So I just said I needed time. Time was the one thing I didn't have. My relationship with my brother changed instantly. Every interaction felt heavy. He acted like things could go back to normal if we just didn't talk about it. He avoided my eyes, joked about unrelated things, tried to act casual. That hurt in a different way. It showed me how little he understood the damage he had caused. Or maybe he understood and just didn't care enough to face it. His girlfriend became a silent presence in all of this. She never reached out. Never apologized. Never explained. I didn't even know if she was aware of where the money came from, or if she knew and chose to ignore it. That uncertainty ate at me. I imagined conversations between them, decisions made behind my back, my savings being discussed like it was disposable. Like it wasn't built from years of sacrifice and pain. Family gatherings became unbearable. Our parents noticed the tension immediately. They asked questions. I gave vague answers. I wasn't ready to expose everything yet. Part of me still hoped my brother would fix this quietly, that he would return the money before anyone else had to know. Another part of me felt angry that I was even protecting him after what he did. At night, I lay awake thinking about trust. How fragile it is. How easily it breaks. I had trusted my brother not just with my money but with my story. He knew about the miscarriages. He knew about the doctor visits, the hormones, the tears I cried in bathrooms at work. He knew how much IVF meant to me and still made his choice. That betrayal cut deeper than the financial loss. I started questioning everything. Should I have kept my savings secret? Should I have been more careful? Should I have seen the signs? Guilt crept in even though I knew logically that none of this was my fault. Still, guilt has a way of settling in when you're already vulnerable. The stress started affecting my health. I felt tired all the time, more than usual. My appetite disappeared. Small things made me cry. IVF is already emotionally demanding, and now I was dealing with betrayal layered on top of it. Doctors talk a lot about reducing stress during fertility treatment. That advice felt almost cruel now. I looked into my options quietly. Legal routes, bank policies, family mediation. Every option came with consequences. If I reported it, my brother could face serious trouble. If I stayed silent, I might never get the money back. Either way, something would break. Either my dream of becoming a parent or my family as I knew it. Meanwhile, my brother kept sending short messages. I'm working on it. I'll fix this. Please don't tell mom and dad. Each message felt like another weight added to my chest. He was asking me to carry his guilt on top of my own pain. He was asking for patience when I had already run out. I started keeping everything inside, and that was a mistake. The anger built up slowly, quietly, until it was all I could think about. At work, I found myself staring at the clock, wondering how many more hours it would take to earn back what was stolen. The thought was overwhelming. I had already pushed myself to the edge once. Doing it again felt impossible. Sometimes I imagined confronting his girlfriend directly, asking her if she knew, asking her how she could accept something that wasn't hers. But I never did. I wasn't sure I was ready for the answers, or the lack of them. The hardest part was the feeling of being alone. IVF already makes you feel isolated. People don't know what to say, so they say nothing. Now, on top of that, I felt betrayed by the one person who was supposed to be on my side no matter what. Family is supposed to protect you, not take from you. As days turned into weeks, the silence became louder. No money returned. No real plan. Just promises floating in the air with no substance behind them. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped, hoping it was him telling me he had the money. Every time I was disappointed. I started to realize that this wasn't just about $10,000 anymore. It was about boundaries. Respect. Whether my pain mattered to him at all. It was about whether I could forgive something that had changed the course of my life so drastically. And the biggest question lingered in my mind, unanswered and terrifying. What if the money never comes back? What if my chance at IVF slips away because of this? What if the person who broke my trust also destroyed my dream of becoming a parent? Those thoughts followed me everywhere, refusing to let go. And with each passing day, the distance between me and my brother grew wider, filled with silence, regret, and a choice I knew I couldn't avoid forever. The longer this went on, the more complicated everything became. It wasn't just about confronting my brother anymore. It was about how deeply his actions were affecting every part of my life. I started to see how one decision had created a ripple effect that touched my work, my health, my family, and my future plans. Nothing existed in isolation anymore. Everything was tangled together and I was stuck in the middle of it. At work, my performance began to slip. I was still putting in long hours, but my focus was gone. I made small mistakes, the kind that usually never happened. My manager noticed and pulled me aside one day, asking if everything was okay. I almost told the truth. The words sat at the edge of my lips. But I swallowed them back and said I was just tired. It was easier than explaining how my own brother had stolen the money I saved for IVF treatment. Outside of work, my social life disappeared completely. Friends invited me out, but I always declined. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to explain. I didn't want to hear advice I wasn't ready to take. Most people don't understand the emotional weight behind fertility struggles, and adding family betrayal to that felt like too much to unpack in casual conversations. At home, I found myself sorting through old paperwork, IVF brochures, and notes from doctors. I read them over and over as if somehow the answers would change. Timelines stared back at me, reminding me that time mattered more than money in some ways. Age, hormone levels, and treatment windows don't pause for personal crises. Every delay felt like another door slowly closing. Meanwhile, my brother's life seemed to move forward. From the outside, nothing looked different. He still posted photos online. He still talked about future plans with his girlfriend. Watching that hurt more than I expected. It felt unfair that he could move on so easily while I was stuck picking up the pieces of what he broke. I began to notice how people around us reacted differently to the situation, even without knowing the details. Our parents sensed something was wrong, but they filled the silence with assumptions that didn't touch the truth. They worried about work stress or burnout, never imagining the real source of the tension. Every family dinner felt like a performance, with everyone playing their part and avoiding the elephant in the room. There were moments when I almost told them everything. The words would form in my head, clear and sharp. But fear stopped me. Fear of what it would do to our family. Fear of being blamed for causing drama. Fear of hearing excuses made on his behalf. Once things are said out loud, they can't be taken back. I also started to question my own reactions. Some days I felt overwhelming anger. Other days I felt numb. I wondered if this emotional roller coaster was affecting my chances with IVF, even if I somehow managed to move forward. Stress, doctors say, can impact the body in ways we don't fully understand. The irony of that wasn't lost on me. Late at night, I replayed our confrontation in my head. His tone. His body language. The way he avoided taking full responsibility. I realized that part of what hurt so much was the lack of urgency on his part. If the roles were reversed, I would have done anything to fix it immediately. Sold things. Taken extra jobs. Asked for help. He didn't seem willing to do the same. I started noticing small shifts in how I saw him. Memories from our childhood surfaced. Moments I once brushed off as harmless but now felt different. Times when he borrowed things and didn't return them. Times when he avoided consequences. It made me wonder if this behavior was new or if I had just chosen not to see it before. The question of his girlfriend remained a constant shadow. I imagined her perspective, whatever it might be. Did she know the money was meant for IVF? Did she understand what that meant? Or was she only seeing a gift, a solution to her own wants, detached from the pain behind it? That unknown added another layer of frustration. I considered reaching out to her directly more than once. I typed messages and deleted them. I practiced conversations in my head. But each time I stopped myself. I wasn't sure if contacting her would bring clarity or just more hurt. Sometimes not knowing feels safer than facing a truth you can't undo. As weeks passed, the savings account remained empty. My brother's promises grew less frequent. When I did hear from him, the messages were shorter, less detailed. That shift scared me more than anything else. It felt like the beginning of acceptance on his end while I was still drowning. I started researching alternative options quietly. Payment plans, loans, grants for fertility treatment. Each option came with risks and long-term consequences. Taking on debt for IVF felt overwhelming, but so did giving up altogether. Every choice felt like a loss in some way. Through all of this, one thought kept returning. This wasn't just a financial betrayal. It was a violation of trust at a time when I was already emotionally exposed. Trying to conceive, dealing with infertility, and saving for IVF had already stripped me down to my most vulnerable self. What my brother did took advantage of that vulnerability. I also couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. We no longer spoke freely. Conversations felt forced, careful, full of things left unsaid. The bond one thought we had was cracking, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired, even if the money came back. Every day felt like waiting for something to break. Either I would confront the situation fully or it would confront me. The tension hung over everything, unresolved and heavy. I knew this couldn't continue forever. Something had to give. But for now, I was stuck in this painful in-between space, holding on to hope with one hand and betrayal with the other, unsure which one would slip away first. By this point, every part of my life felt like it was holding its breath. The pressure built quietly day by day until even small moments felt heavy. I woke up each morning with the same knot in my stomach, wondering if today would be the day something finally changed. A message, a confession, a breakdown, anything. The waiting was exhausting in a way I didn't know how to explain. The fertility clinic called again, this time with a firmer tone. They needed confirmation, deposits, decisions. I listened in silence as the nurse explained timelines and options, her voice calm and practiced. When the call ended, I sat there staring at my phone, feeling like time was slipping through my fingers. IVF isn't something you can delay forever. Every month matters. Every delay feels like a risk. I finally told my brother we needed to talk. Not through text. Not through short messages filled with excuses. I needed answers. Real ones. He agreed, but his response was slow, cautious, like he already knew this conversation wouldn't end well. We met in a quiet place, neutral ground, somewhere that didn't belong to either of us. The air between us felt thick before we even spoke. I asked him directly if he had any plan to return the money. Not someday. Not eventually. No. He avoided the question at first, talking in circles about stress, pressure, and how complicated things were. I listened, trying to stay calm, but every word felt like another delay tactic. When I pressed him again, his silence said more than his excuses ever could. That's when I realized something that scared me. He didn't feel the same urgency I did. To him, this was a problem that could wait. To me, it was everything. My chance at IVF. My chance at becoming a parent. My chance at healing years of heartbreak. We were standing on completely different sides of the same crisis. He mentioned his girlfriend again, how she was struggling, how he felt responsible for her happiness. Hearing that hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. It felt like my pain was being weighed against hers and somehow coming up short. Like my years of infertility, my 80-hour weeks, my sacrifices were just another inconvenience in his life. I asked him if she knew where the money came from. He hesitated. That hesitation felt like a punch to the chest. It told me everything without him saying a word. Whether she knew or not, the truth had been buried under excuses and silence. And I was the one paying the price. After that conversation, something shifted inside me. The sadness was still there, but it was joined by something sharper. A clarity I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. I started to accept that this situation might not end the way I hoped. That the money might not come back in time. Or at all. I began preparing for difficult conversations I had been avoiding. With doctors. With my employer. With my parents. Each one felt like stepping closer to the edge of something irreversible. Once I spoke the truth, there would be no going back to pretending everything was fine. The tension at home became unbearable. My parents started asking more direct questions. They noticed how distant my brother and I had become. They noticed the strain in my voice, the exhaustion in my face. One night, my mother asked me if I was okay, really okay. I almost broke right there. I almost told her everything. But fear held me back again. At the same time, my body started showing signs of the stress I'd been carrying. Missed sleep, headaches, a constant tightness in my chest. The irony of trying to prepare for IVF while being this emotionally drained wasn't lost on me. Doctors always say mental health matters during fertility treatment. I wondered how much damage had already been done. I also started thinking about boundaries in a way I never had before. What does it mean to protect yourself when the person hurting you is family? How far do you go before enough is enough? Those questions followed me everywhere, especially late at night when everything was quiet and my thoughts were loud. The final straw came in a small, unexpected way. I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. Nothing dramatic. Just a few careless words that confirmed what I'd been afraid of all along. My brother wasn't just struggling to repay me. He was making plans that didn't include fixing what he had broken. That realization hit harder than anything else. It wasn't just that the money was gone. It was that my pain wasn't his priority. And once I accepted that, I knew I couldn't stay in this limbo much longer. I began gathering everything. Bank statements, messages, dates, details. Not because I had made a final decision yet, but because I needed to be ready. Ready for whatever came next. Ready to protect myself if no one else would. The tension reached a point where even silence felt loud. Every interaction felt like it could explode at any moment. Every day felt like it was pushing me closer to a choice I didn't want to make but couldn't avoid forever. And as I stood there, caught between family loyalty and my dream of becoming a parent, I knew the next step would change everything. The only question left was how much I was willing to lose to finally move forward. Just when I thought things couldn't get heavier, something happened that changed the entire shape of the situation. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It came quietly, the way bad news often does, slipping into my life when I was already worn down. I received an email from the fertility clinic that made my hands shake as I read it. Due to scheduling and my medical history, they recommended not delaying treatment much longer. Waiting too long could reduce my chances. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was a warning. One I couldn't ignore. That email sat open on my screen for a long time. I didn't cry right away. I just stared at it, feeling the weight of time pressing down on me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a window that might close if I hesitated too long. IVF isn't just expensive. It's time-sensitive. And suddenly, every excuse my brother gave felt even more hollow. Around the same time, I found out something else that stopped me cold. A mutual acquaintance casually mentioned that my brother and his girlfriend were talking about moving in together. Bigger place. Higher rent. Future plans. I smiled and nodded in the moment, but inside my chest tightened. Moving forward. Spending more. Building a life. All while my savings were gone and my future was on pause. That was the second blow. The one that made it clear this wasn't just a mistake or a moment of bad judgment. This was a pattern of choices, and none of them included making things right with me. The money I worked 80-hour weeks to save for IVF treatment wasn't being treated like a debt. It was being treated like it had never mattered in the first place. I confronted my brother again, this time with less patience and fewer soft edges. I told him about the clinic. About the timeline. About what delaying IVF could mean for me. I expected something to shift. Some sign of urgency. Some acknowledgement of the damage he was causing. Instead, he looked overwhelmed, defensive, and distant. He said he didn't know what I wanted him to do. That sentence stayed with me. I wanted him to take responsibility. I wanted him to understand that this wasn't just money. This was my chance at having a child. My chance at a family. Hearing him act confused made something inside me break quietly. Then he said something that felt like a betrayal all over again. He suggested that maybe I should wait. That maybe IVF could happen later. As if infertility works on a flexible schedule. As if hope can be paused and resumed whenever it's convenient. That was the moment I realized how far apart we truly were. He wasn't just minimizing the situation. He was rewriting it in a way that made him feel less guilty. And I was the one being asked to carry the consequences. I went home that night feeling heavier than ever. The evidence I'd been collecting sat on my table, neatly organized. Bank records. Messages. Dates. Proof. I had started this out of fear, but now it felt like preparation. Not for revenge. For survival. For protecting what little control I had left over my own future. The pressure from all sides became unbearable. The fertility clinic needed answers. My parents needed honesty. My brother needed to be held accountable. And I needed to decide how much more I was willing to sacrifice to keep the peace. The emotional toll was showing in ways I couldn't hide anymore. My patience was gone. My energy was gone. Even my body felt like it was warning me that I couldn't keep living like this. IVF already demands so much physically and mentally. Adding family betrayal on top of that felt impossible to carry. Then came the moment that truly escalated everything. My parents called a family meeting. They said they couldn't ignore the tension anymore. They wanted everyone together. No excuses. No avoiding it. My heart raced as I hung up the phone. This was it. The truth was about to come out whether I was ready or not. I didn't sleep the night before. I kept imagining different outcomes. Anger, denial, tears, blame. I didn't know how my parents would react. I didn't know if they would support me or try to smooth things over to keep the family intact. The uncertainty was terrifying. When we all sat down together, the room felt smaller than usual. My brother wouldn't look at me. His girlfriend wasn't there, which somehow made it worse. My parents asked us to explain what was going on. The silence stretched on, heavy and uncomfortable. I felt my hands shaking as I began to speak. Years of holding things and came rushing to the surface. I talked about the IVF journey, the 80-hour work weeks, the $10,000 I saved, the trust one placed in my brother. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just told the truth. As I spoke, I watched my parents' faces change. Confusion turned to shock. Shock turned to something deeper. My brother finally looked up, his expression unreadable. The air felt thick with everything that had been left unsaid for too long. But even then, the story didn't end. Because just when I thought everything was finally out in the open, my brother said something that shifted the ground beneath all of us. Something I wasn't expecting. Something that suggested there was more to this situation than I had been told. And in that moment, I realized the conflict wasn't just escalating. It was transforming into something far bigger, something that would force all of us to face truths we had been avoiding. The next step would either tear us apart completely or change our relationships forever. The room went completely silent after my brother spoke. His words hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. He admitted that when he took the money, he never planned on telling me right away. He thought he could replace it before I noticed. He said he believed things would work out somehow. Hearing that confirmed what I had been afraid of all along. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. My parents looked at him, stunned. My mother's hands trembled as she asked him how he could do that, knowing what IVF meant to me. Knowing how hard I had worked, how many hours I had sacrificed, how much hope I had tied to that savings account. My brother tried to explain, but his words kept falling apart under their own weight. The excuses sounded hollow now that everything was out in the open. I finally felt something shift inside me. For the first time since this started, I wasn't carrying the truth alone. The burden had been shared and the silence was broken. My father asked one simple question that cut through everything. He asked when the money would be returned. Not eventually. Not someday. No. That's when the reality fully crashed down. My brother admitted he didn't have it. Not even close. Most of it was gone. Spent. The room seemed to tilt when he said that. It felt like the final confirmation of my worst fear. The $10,000 I worked 80-hour weeks to save for IVF treatment wasn't just delayed. It was erased. I felt tears burn my eyes, but I forced myself to stay steady. This was the moment everything came together. The betrayal. The loss. The choices I had been avoiding. I told them about the clinic's warning, about how delaying IVF could lower my chances. I told them how every day felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. My parents were devastated. Not just angry but heartbroken. Angry that one child had hurt the other so deeply. Heartbroken that a dream was at risk because of it. They asked my brother's girlfriend to come over the next day. They wanted to hear her side. I wasn't sure I wanted that, but it was already set in motion. The next day was even harder. She admitted she knew the money wasn't really his. She said she didn't know all the details at first, but she knew enough. That truth hit like a second betrayal layered on top of the first. It wasn't just one bad decision. It was a shared one. That's when my parents made a decision I never expected. They offered to help me financially so I wouldn't lose my chance at IVF. Not as a gift, but as a loan to my brother in their name. They said he would repay them, not me. They refused to let my future be destroyed by his choices. I didn't know how to react. Relief and guilt crashed into each other. I had never wanted my parents dragged into this. But at the same time, the thought of finally moving forward, of not losing everything I worked for, felt overwhelming. After days of thinking, crying, and talking with doctors, I accepted their help. The IVF process moved forward, but nothing felt simple anymore. The joy I thought I would feel was mixed with grief and anger. My relationship with my brother was fractured. We barely spoke. Trust wasn't something that could be fixed with money, no matter where it came from. Just when I thought the dust was settling, the final twist came. A few weeks into treatment, my brother showed up unannounced. He looked different. Tired. Stripped of excuses. He told me he had taken out a personal loan without telling anyone. Not to erase what he did, but to start repaying our parents immediately. He said it was the first real step he'd taken to own what he did. I didn't forgive him in that moment. Healing doesn't work like that. But I listened. And for the first time since this all began, his actions matched his words, even if it was late. Very late. As I continue this IVF journey, nothing feels guaranteed. Not success. Not family peace. Not forgiveness. But what I do know is this. I fought for my dream. I refused to let silence take it from me. And even though the betrayal changed everything, it didn't end my story. The hardest truth I learned is that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But even then you still have a choice. To speak up. To protect your future. And to keep moving forward even when the path is nothing like you imagined. The weeks that followed felt slower, quieter, but heavier in a different way. IVF became my focus again, not as a distant dream but as something real and happening. Appointments filled my calendar. Medications lined my counter. My body went through changes that were both physical and emotional. Some days I felt hopeful. Other days I felt scared. But at least I was moving forward, and that mattered more than anything. My parents kept their word. They handled the financial side firmly and fairly. My brother began repaying them, slowly, painfully, and with consequences that finally felt real to him. There were no more excuses, no more vague promises. It didn't erase what he did, but it created boundaries that hadn't existed before. For the first time, I wasn't the one carrying the weight of his mistake. Our relationship didn't magically heal. We didn't suddenly go back to being close. Conversations were short and careful. Sometimes awkward. Sometimes silent. But the anger softened over time, replaced by something quieter. Not forgiveness yet, but understanding that healing doesn't happen on a schedule. Just like IVF, it takes time and patience. His girlfriend faded into the background after everything came out. They stayed together for a while, but the dynamic clearly changed. Trust had been damaged there too. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need details. I had learned that protecting my emotional space was just as important as protecting my savings account ever was. As for my parents, our bond shifted in a way I didn't expect. We talked more openly than we ever had before. About mistakes. About pressure. About how family love doesn't mean ignoring harm. They admitted they wished they had seen the signs sooner. I admitted I wished I had spoken up earlier. Those conversations didn't erase the pain, but they made it feel shared instead of lonely. IVF itself was a journey I can only describe as humbling. It stripped away control in ways nothing else ever had. I learned quickly that effort doesn't always guarantee results, even when you give everything you have. But I also learned how strong I was, even on days when my body felt tired and my heart felt fragile. There were moments during treatment when the weight of everything hit me all over again. Sitting in waiting rooms, surrounded by others fighting similar battles, I realized how many stories go untold. How many people carry invisible pain while still showing up to work, family events, and daily life. That awareness changed me. It softened my judgments and deepened my empathy. The question people often ask is whether I regret trusting my brother in the first place. The honest answer is no. Trust isn't a weakness. What he did was wrong, but my ability to trust came from love, not ignorance. The lesson wasn't to stop trusting everyone. It was to recognize when trust needs boundaries. Financially, I became more cautious, more private. Emotionally, I became more honest even when it was uncomfortable. I learned that silence doesn't protect peace. It only delays conflict until it becomes impossible to ignore. Speaking up earlier might not have changed my brother's actions, but it could have spared me weeks of quiet suffering. As time passed, my brother and I slowly found a new normal. Not the old one, but something different. More distant, but more honest. He never asked for forgiveness directly, and I never offered it easily. But accountability became part of our interactions, and that mattered. Sometimes repair doesn't look like closeness. Sometimes it looks like respect. IVF continued with no guarantees, just cautious hope. I learned to live in that space, balancing optimism with realism. No matter the outcome, I knew I had already fought for myself in ways I never had before. I had stood up for my dream, even when it meant facing family conflict and uncomfortable truths. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't losing the $10,000. It was realizing how easily someone else's choices can derail your life when you're already vulnerable. Trying to conceive, saving for IVF treatment, working exhausting hours, and carrying emotional weight all at once is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. But it taught me resilience I didn't know I had. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about boundaries. About how dreams deserve protection. About how family love doesn't excuse harm. And about how speaking the truth, even when it's painful, can be the first step toward healing. If there's one thing I want people to take away from this, it's this. Your struggles are valid. Your goals matter. And no one has the right to take from you what you worked so hard to build, whether it's money, trust, or hope. I don't know what the future holds. IVF is unpredictable. Family dynamics are complicated. Healing takes time. But I do know this. I didn't let betrayal define my ending. I chose to keep moving forward, even when the path was messy and uncertain. And sometimes, that's the strongest ending you can give yourself.